everyone. And thank you for attending our little event tonight. Our deepest apologies about the somewhat late start on this. I want to thank everyone, both present here with us and attending virtually, for coming out tonight and making time of busy schedule to be here. This is going to be an interactive hybrid event that focuses on the challenges that people on probation face, as well as their families after incarceration, and the solutions that are currently needed to fix Delaware's broken probation system. We will have a little bit of time for questions after the event. If you have them here in person, please just hold them until then. And those attending virtually, if you have any questions, do feel free to enter them into the question and answer feature of the chat, or just into the general chat window. To give everyone a brief overview of how we're going to be doing this tonight, we're going to be starting off with a poll by our Campaign for Smart Justice manager, Hanif Salam, following by a statement by Mr. Michael Bartley, founder of Heads Up 302, a partner in the Campaign for Smart Justice. After that, we have a brief video presentation that we're going to be providing, a PowerPoint to lend some additional context to that, another poll by Hanif, and finally, we'll have our call to action and a question and answer section. So with that said, I would like to first present the Campaign for Smart Justice manager, Hanif Salam.
Thanks, Seth. And thanks again for everybody coming out this evening, everybody that is watching online. I'm so excited about this movement that I can't even say starting, we're keeping going. People, not probation. I want to tell everybody you can check out the website, peoplenotprobation.com, to get more information. You can find the probation report that we completed, and I believe that was about 2019 when I dropped. And it was really the basis for us to look into how we could reform the probation system. So I had a question for everybody in the room, everybody's watching online. How many people have had an experience with the probation and parole system in Delaware? Anybody care to share? Good, bad, or indifferent? We're gonna hear from Michael Bartley in a bit. But outside of Mike, anybody in the room or online care to share their experience with probation? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Let me introduce myself.
I'm gonna need you to project so the people online can.
Yes, sir. Let me turn the volume up a little bit. My name is Dawood Muhammad. Currently on parole. Been on parole since 2019 after serving a substantial amount of time. I'm gonna be specific. 38 years. So far, my experience with parole, probation, parole, it's more positive. Let me say that. The negative, let me share the positive side. With my PO, I'm in pretty good standing with my PO. They basically set the standard that, you have to definitely, you have to be employed, you have to have somewhere to stay, and stay in your lane as far as the law, and the police. And I've been doing that.
And since you've been doing what you need to do, you've had a pretty good experience thus far.
Yeah, the negative side is after serving all this time I've been down, I think it's unfair for me to remain, on parole. And I'm taking some steps and doing what I need to do to try to, detach.
Okay. Before I see if there's any other question or comments, can I just ask, how long have you been on probation, parole, and how long do you have?
Since 2019, they got me on
2 years.
lifetime parole.
Lifetime parole.
Yeah.
Okay.
as far as comment, as far as, what I think that needs to be, as you were reformed. I think more emphasis needs to be put on the parole officers to be more competent, and be more, respectful.
Okay.
Of their clients.
Point taken. Respect it goes both ways, right? And it's something that should always be given and earned, right? So I appreciate you, Brother Dawu, for sharing your experiences. And before we hear from the first speaker, I'll just open it up one last time for anybody online or in person who has had an experience with probation and parole that they'd like to share.
Well, Hanif, outside of my work with the ACLU, I also do private counseling. And one of the groups that I work with is comprised entirely of individuals on probation. And so I hear an awful lot about what they're going through pretty much constantly, at least once every week. I hear about the difficulties that they face in getting and maintaining employment. A lot of these guys have been working at the jobs that they've been at for years now, but it's really hard for them to get ahead because of the stigma that a criminal record carries. So, I haven't personally experienced it, but it's something that I see an awful lot.
I could imagine. Well, that is just our first poll. Stay tuned. This is an interactive event, and hopefully individuals that are in person with me will warm up and have a little more to say as the event goes on. But if not, we do have a ton of information to share. And we're going to start off with some information from a good brother that I know personally, that has been in this work with me, that as well as myself has experienced the same things that I have experienced. And so with that being said, I want to call up Michael Bartley to share his experiences and his successes that he's had after he's came home from prison. Yeah, come on out, Mike. Let's warm Mike up, give him some love.
Good evening, everyone. Hanif said, my name is Michael K.O. Bartley. Born and raised here in the state of Wilmington, this wonderful small state of Wilmington, Delaware. I just recently finished serving 16 years and 8 months. Been home going on 6 years and almost 8 months. So, yeah. See, the longest I've ever been out, and out of the system completely now, thank God. But yeah, so some of my experiences, man, first of all, I was sentenced to 24 years of probation coming out of doing that type of time. So that alone was a culture shock for me. And then coming home, having to go out Cherry Lane and deal with, what I would call the negative forces of yesterday, because it seemed like those behaviors and stuff that goes on with people who are supposed to be professional, they wasn't really, it wasn't no accountability, put it like that. So they were saying things and trying to, push buttons to see if people change. So, and it seemed like that's their job, but it shouldn't be like that. They're really supposed to help us reform and, redirect our thought processes and want to get out here in the world and be productive. You would think they would push that envelope of things, but it was a lot of resistance that I caught. I was able to discern these things because I dealt with a lot of personalities and that long stint that I did down in Sussex County and James T. Vaughn. So yeah, so the probation experience was kind of tough for me because first of all, in my mind, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to complete 22 to 23 years of probation, level 3 at that, so I had to be in the house at 10 o'clock and things like that. So, but I was like, I was hearing about they couldn't give you no more than 18 month stuff. And, actually when I was in work release, I was trying to reach out to the judge down in Sussex. So, that was falling on deaf ears, it seemed. So, and I felt like, I was like, damn, why, I got to do all this. Then I'm paying probation. It's like I'm coming out of my pocket paying for them to do, do their job. So I was kind of confused. I was like, wow, the deck is, stacked kind of high, for a brother, to come out and try to be successful. But nevertheless, I kept grinding. I didn't allow that to deter my thoughts of moving forward in life. I had a wonderful daughter. My daughter was, she was in her freshman year in high school. When I went in, she was in the belly, came home, she was doing some great things at Del Castle. So I'm like, I gotta get out there and do what I need to do, you know what I'm saying? So went through all the stuff that they kept, and then I had a couple of probation officers, they switched me a few times, and one of them put some paperwork in for me to try to get it, took it down or whatever, wrote the judge. The judge responded, was like, nah, you're not ready, Mr. Bartley. So, so I kind of was like, okay, I didn't get frustrated, came home, started working. I was working multiple jobs. I ended up landing a job as something that I was passionate about, working in the school system. So I ended up working at Parkway Academy, one of the, I'm quite sure you know about Parkway, basically an alternative school that deals with attitudes and behaviors of these kids that can't be in the regular school setting. So I was put into that job function, and it really, opened my eyes to a lot of things that was going on, but it helped me stay strong and kept me stronger at what I had to do dealing with probation and parole, dealing with these kids. So, that was pretty much one of the first jobs I had that really tested me as well as dealing with those people out there at Cherry Lane. But the probation system, it seemed like it was trying to send me back. And I knew I couldn't go back, because I had all the time to back up. So, I stayed the course, kept working, landed a better job, being around good guys, put me in position. Years ago, when I came out of prison, I was handed a gun, cocaine, ways to get on my feet. This time I came out, I was handed opportunity. I had some brothers that was in place already working in the field, doing things. And I just followed the yellow brick road and stayed the course with that, the blueprint, so to speak. So, so ended up, one of my good friends, rest in peace, named Dr. Newton. If y'all know Terrence Newton, he came to me, was like, yo, I just landed, the principal job at Warner. And he said, man, I'm bringing you with me. I couldn't believe it. I was like, Warner. So, I'm thinking, about my past. I'm like, man, you sure they gonna hire me? So he's like, man, we're gonna take a leap of faith and try. Darrell Green, who's the superintendent there at Warner, man, big ups to him. He gave me an opportunity. So I've been at Warner for 4 years now. Unfortunately, we lost Dr. Newt, but I know the mission was, to keep his legacy going. So I'm over there now as a paraprofessional, dealing with behaviors and stuff that I was dealing with coming up through the system. And eventually, before all this though, I didn't get to this point. Before I did land that job at Warner, I did ended up getting granted, got all my probations dismissed by the judge down in Sussex. That's where my case was at. So I got a lot of letters from people, working in the community, different people that I dealt with throughout that stint. And it was marvelous to hear what the judge had to say, because he spoke highly of me. It's the same judge who said that your record was atrocious and things like that. But he spoke highly of me. And I guess it might have been a test, but sometimes that probation thing is a deterrence, man, and have a lot of people going left. And a lot of stuff that's going on, we got to be strong. We got to have a support system. Coming out. A lot of people don't have it, and that's what's going on. Like that, we got to bring that to the attention that their job is not to punish us, man. Their job is to help us reform ourselves, give us some resources, man, so we can come out here and be successful, man. So, my thing was, man, just and staying in position, because I'm still in position, doing things like my brother Hanif said, I got my own stuff. Heads Up in the 302. It's called Heads Up is an acronym to it. It says healthy, encouraging attitudes, design solutions. So, and the up is uniting the people. So, that's one of my businesses. That's something that I'm riding with, because it's solution driven. We got the solutions. We are the solutions to our issues. So I just try to stay motivated and try to help brothers. Me and Hanif, we've been in this thing, man, for a few years now. Not just Hanif, but a lot of other brothers and sisters out here. Just, keeping the people strong. We got to keep them optimistic, man. And, in these dark days, So, and that stuff coming out of there, man, I think we got to just do better. Probation, they got to do better and be held accountable, for what's going on, man. Stop. Because a lot of people, when you go out there, it's like, first of all, it's a stress factor. Just going into probation, even if you ain't did nothing wrong. I know I was doing everything right, and I still had to tuck my tail going there like, damn, they gonna lock me up today. Because that's the whole tone when you go in there. You shouldn't feel like that. They need to create a little better atmosphere out there, man, when you want to go out there report to your probation officer, hey, man, I'm doing an extra job these days, you know what I mean? Better days ahead. Even if you're doing some stuff that you, hey, man, I gotta be honest, man, with some stuff, man. They gotta be open instead of thinking about just sending the person back to prison. Prison is not the option. It's you know what I mean? This system here in Delaware is broken. And it's like, you know, it's only gonna take people like us sharing our information, sharing our story to help fix it, but we gotta hold these people accountable. And so yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's my, you know, my story. And I'm still here and I'm gonna stay here to try to make sure these changes are made. You know what I mean? Because it's nothing constant but change. But it's up to guys like us and sisters like us and people like us to get these changes done and hold Delaware accountable for what's going on, especially with that Safe Street stuff. I'm surprised that thing's still up and running.
Yes, indeed.
So I appreciate you guys letting me share that. Yeah.
That's the perfect segue, brother. Thanks again to Mike for coming up, sharing his stories, his experiences on probation. And that's what it's all about, people, not probation. Like, I enjoy hearing Mike's story, to hear everything he's accomplished. And that is the goal for everybody that's coming home, for us to provide them with the resources and the support that they need to be successful, as opposed to pushing buttons and triggers and reincarcerating individuals for things like technical violations or making it harder for individuals when they're just trying to work and maintain for their family. So another piece to this with probation is Operation Safe Streets. And for anybody here today or watching online, Operation Safe Streets is a partnership with the Delaware Department of Corrections and police departments. It is also known as the Governor's Task Force when this operation is partnered with the Delaware State Police. And now we are going to watch a short clip that was done by 47 ABC that will share about a family that was affected by Operation Safe Streets and our campaign to end it.
Safe Streets works in the first state to keep communities safer by monitoring probationers. Deja Parker spoke with police officers and a mother who had her home raided by OSS. Deja, now tell us, what did they tell you?
Rob, I spoke with Cherie Congo, who is calling for justice. She says one of the issues is the confusion when OSS enters the home because of uniforms not being properly labeled. And the ACLU of Delaware is backing her and calling out the mistreatment of Operation Safe Streets.
So I was thinking, we're all going to die. We're all going to get killed.
That's how Cherie Congo was feeling when her home was raided by Operation Safe Streets, following her son's suspected probation violation. OSS is a program that partners with the DOC and other local police departments to carry out its mission.
Safe Streets probation officers is to assist the caseload officers in work that they may not be able to do at that time. And in turn, as a street crimes unit, our goal is the reduction of violent crime, firearms offenses, and drug offenses.
This allows the task force to complete field work, making visits to probationers home, a visit that Congo believes turned ugly.
Mom, help me. Mom, they hurting me. Mom, they hurt me. So now I'm screaming, crying, please, somebody help my son. Call the ambulance. I don't want my son to die on my floor.
The people that are called to protect and serve, Congo feels acted like monsters when they raided her home.
He picks him up. He slams him into my dresser. He slams him to a wall, and then he slams him onto the ground. So now he's punching my son. He's punching my son in the chest. He's hitting him in his face and everything.
Dover police say they will continue the operation because it has proven to keep streets in the first state safer by 24%.
Beginning of October, we are at 32 shootings. Last year, we had, as of October, 42 shootings.
The ACLU of Delaware has stepped in, and with their continued efforts, they would like to see an end to Operation Safe Streets.
The way Safe Streets goes about handling their job and doing their job
because they truly violate the rights of many constitutional rights. And there is really no oversight to Operation Safe Streets to ensure they follow some type of policy and procedure.
Mother Cherie Congo wants justice. She says it's almost 2 years and she and her family are still haunted by this incident. The ACLU of Delaware wants Operation Safe Streets to end because they believe the Department of Corrections needs to change its approach. That is, a social services approach. The Delaware State Police Department also uses OSS and says the operation has been effective. Live in studio, Deja Parker, 47 ABC, WMDT.
Yeah, thanks, Deja. The ACLU of Delaware is looking for people to share their stories regarding any police violence or mistreatment. You can share that information with them on their website, as they're now calling on local elected officials to take action.
As we'll soon also see, unfortunately, Ms. Congo's experience is far from a unique one. I want to talk a little bit about what exactly Operation Safe Streets is, how it works, and what the data shows us it is actually practically doing. If you aren't familiar with Operation Safe Streets, as Henny already explained, you may have gotten the impression that there's some kind of secret police force from that video. And unfortunately, you wouldn't be terribly far off from reality. Launched in 1997, OSS's stated intention was to address recent shootings in Wilmington with the central philosophy of the task force being that aggressively policing people on probation would reduce crime, which on its face sounds rather compelling, doesn't it? Don't release criminals, demonstrably commit the most crimes. The Department of Corrections says as much. In fact, this enabled them to partner with law enforcement to form a task force where police officers work alongside probation officers to, and I quote, identify, monitor, and investigate high-risk and or repeat offenders, or in other words, people on probation. The stated goal of this task force was to reduce shootings by 30% and violent crime by 5%, increasing compliance with supervision, again, probation, by 30% and increase individual probation violations by 15%. So from its inception, OSS was designed specifically to target people on probation, hoping to reduce crime by sending more of them to prison, or rather back to prison. And it has wildly been touted as a resounding success. A year after it was instituted, Operation Safe Streets was adopted by the Newcastle County PD and then the Dover PD, and then later taken up by adopted as the governor's task force, the GTF, in Kent and Sussex counties, as Smith explained. I wish I could tell you how successful it's actually been, but we don't actually know. OSS doesn't have to disclose reports on their effectiveness. In 2003, they called the overall program successful based on a reduction of gun violence, specifically lethal shootings down 108 in 1996 to 44 in 2003, as well as higher drug arrests and also a 27% overall increase in prison population during that time. But to determine the actual impact of OSS and the governor's task force on the community, the ACLU had to go a little bit deeper. We drew on interviews, court transcripts, legal filings, and official police narratives. We tended to interview several people who had been affected by OSS firsthand, but many of them declined to share or did so anonymously out of fear of reprisals. A review of court cases that reference OSS and GTF operations showed that 6 of them originated with home searches, 5 started with traffic violations, 2 with interactions involving a parked car, and 4 with pedestrians simply walking around. So who is OSS targeting? Valid question. If the actions of OSS were consistent with the demographics of people who are currently on probation in Delaware, we'd see about half white, half black, a few Hispanic, and a minute proportion of every other demographic group. But if you're here, then you have probably already guessed that those statistics are not actually reported in the stop data. In fact, a recent report by Lauren Gill showed that in 2019 and 2020, 58 of the 60 random vehicle searches conducted by OSS officers for traffic violations that ultimately resulted in an arrest were conducted upon a black driver. The other 2 were Hispanic.
You have gender breakdowns?
I'll have to go to the data for that. The fact is that Operation Safe Streets.
We'll have questions and answers.
Sorry, my apologies. Operation Safe Streets and its copycats have simply given the police a mandate and the tools to work with probation officers to surveil and harass individuals on probation, allowing them to target Black and brown neighborhoods for increased policing based on the concentration of individuals on probation in those areas. This partnership allows them numerous overreaches, such as using minor infractions as a reason to stop and search somebody, outright fabricating reasons such as a waft of marijuana or seeing the outline of a gun as precedent to stop and search somebody, to randomly stop and search anybody on probation, even when their supervision wouldn't ordinarily call for it, and to outright take the property and money of individuals on probation in the form of collateral arrests. It also allows them to go on fishing expeditions where they will hover around an area and simply run the numbers on everybody in probation in the area and start looking for people to target. With all of this enhanced power, one might hope that the OSS would at least be more accountable for its actions, but unfortunately it is just the reverse. OSS officers are actually less accountable than normal police in that they don't have to release data on their effectiveness or the demographics of people that they stop. And in fact, they don't even have to report their stops at all unless they lead to an arrest, which means that uncounted numbers of people have likely been needlessly harassed and intruded upon for no other reason than having a criminal record at all. Overall, Operation Safe Streets and the Governor's Task Force have been touted as great successes, yet by any measures, these task groups have not only failed at their ultimate goals of crime prevention and community service, they are moral and institutional failures unto themselves. So let's review those stated goals we talked a little bit about. 30% reduction in shootings, 5% reduction in violent crime, 30% increase in supervision compliance, and 15% increase in technical probation violations. Have these goals been achieved? Well, the simple answer is no. So let's talk about the real impact of OSS and its counterparts that cannot be obscured. These task forces were created in response to gun violence, yet gun violence has increased meaningfully since the program began. There has been a reduction in the number of fatal shootings in Delaware since the initiative started, as the OSS pointed out in 2003. But attributing this to the task force would be a mistake of attribution. Fatal shootings went down everywhere across the country during that same period. These measures generally increase violence, specifically against communities, aggravating the difficulties of reintegration further and contributing to the disruption of families and communities by targeting Black and brown individuals. The one notable excess that OSS can claim is that technical parole violations have indeed gone up, as has the prison population by approximately 27%. The State Analysis Center report says that 93% of those arrested while on probation were arrested for violating the condition of their probation rather than for committing a new crime. This partnership between the police and DOC permit the police action that otherwise would be completely illegal, and between finding housing, transportation, physical and mental health care, securing a living wage, and conforming to the demands of their supervision. People who are on probation are already dealing with an awful lot. Studies have also proven that living under the threat of constant surveillance actually makes people more inclined to reoffend rather than less. So all of this is done in the name of broad community safety. The question that I would like to leave you with this evening is, whose community? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Seth for that very, very thorough presentation on Operation Safe Streets. You can also visit the ACLU of Delaware's website at www.aclu-de.org and find the whole Operation Safe Streets report in detail, where in the OSS report, you will find as specific information as we were able to find, or as Warren Gill was able to find, who was the investigative reporter that created the report. But with a lot of information within DOC and law enforcement, a lot of it really isn't readily available even before the actions. So the full OSS report, which is on the ACLU at Delaware's website, is where you can find the most accurate details that we were able to get around Operation Safe Streets and the individuals and families that were affected. So a question, now that you've seen the video, you've kind of heard the formal presentation, is there anybody that's here or with us online who has been affected by Operation Safe Streets or knows somebody who has been affected by Operation Safe Streets? Okay. All right. Would anybody who is here online like to share briefly their experiences, good, bad, or indifferent, with Operation Safe Streets?
Hello, my name is Crystal Chapman. My son did 7.5 years on a gun charge. Got out on probation. Supposedly, Operation Safe Streets uses CIs for information, whether the information is factual or non-factual, along with probation. My son went to probation April 13th. According to Operation Safe Streets, probation and parole, they acquired a administrative warrant to search my son's home. Supposedly, they found a disassembled AR-15. There's no fingerprints on this so-called gun. There's trace DNA. My son was locked up. Now, mind you, before he went to probation, he left my house. He just got off work. Okay. He's not that stupid. Knowingly giving somebody, according to them, he gave permission for them to search his girlfriend's apartment. If you got a weapon in your house, you on probation, you are not gonna give, permission. But he's on probation. Sat for 3 weeks, spent $11,000. Got him out, but not within 8 days. My son was shot in his apartment building. Probation and parole is outside. But nobody knows who shot my son. Now we have cameras where I used to live, no longer live there, that goes straight to Dover PD. But Operation Safe Streets has no video footage. If you're monitoring all of this, you're doing your investigations and this and that, where's all your evidence? Where's all the evidence? Where's all the information that Operation Safe Streets is supposed to obtain? You're sitting in a room and you're watching so-called violations for these probationers. But when it comes time to present this evidence, it's not being presented in court. But yet they're locking these guys up. Drug screens. If you go to jail for drugs, you have a drug problem.
That's an excellent,
You have a drug
that's an
problem.
excellent point
but
and
you
excellent
have no
segue.
treatment. But you go to probation and you come up high. That's a violation. You go back to jail. You're an addict. Where's your treatment? If you're someone in this society prone to guns, say everybody has guns. You're ready to put everybody back in jail, but nobody's willing to take guns
Right.
off the street.
Excellent point. Another excellent point.
How are these young men, and it's more than this, and I'm not even gonna put this on the old men, I'll put this on these young men, these young boys. Where are they getting all these guns? You can order guns online, ghost guns.
Let me bring it back to probation, because I don't want to overlook the point that you made. And
But
thank
that's
you for sharing.
but that's what probation is using. You know, you're saying, okay, they're doing the straw purchases and whatnot and this and that, but they're targeting probationers. Why aren't you targeting the people that are online selling these guns? You can't tell me with all the technology that we have, you cannot find out where these guns are coming from and this and that, but you're running up in these guys' houses or these people's houses for these ghost guns, but they're the only ones going to jail.
Let me take, I got another hand that I want to take because I like interaction.
Go off what she said. So are you saying that that's probation's job to investigate the sellers for this gun?
Hold on, I'm sorry. And that's a very good question. But straw purchases and accountability. One thing about smart justice is we believe in smart justice, not no justice. So I'm gonna rewind for a second because the conversation was going a little off track. If anybody commits a crime, so if you are on probation and you buy a gun from a straw purchase, I'm not condoning, but whose fault is who is a different conversation. I do appreciate Crystal sharing her experience with Safe Streets. I think a couple of the important points that she highlighted and why we are so adamant about working on ending Operation Safe Streets is the amount of people that's being targeted, right? As Seth said, it is being touted as the #1 police task force to get guns off the street and reduce violence. But since 1997, if we look at totality, numbers are up from 97, not down, right? And these tactics that are employed that are not monitored or watched by anyone are violating people's constitutional rights. So what we're asking is for people to join us in calling for an end to Operation Safe Streets. Allow probation officers to be probation officers and allow our police departments to create crime-fighting units within the police departments that will address crime, so that they will have to follow the procedure and we can alleviate this, oh, I don't need a warrant because you're on probation or you was with somebody on probation. And I want to just drop a couple nuggets and I get to Q&A for anybody that got a question or comment, right? So we just highlighted Operation Safe Streets and our work within it because it is internet connected with probation reform. But I want to just bring everybody's attention back to specifically efforts that are going to be taking place to reform Delaware's current probation system, right? And this is through legislation. On the last day of session on June 30th of this year, Bill SB 345 was introduced. It will be reintroduced in the coming session that starts in January. SB 345 has three main goals: to ensure prison terms are reduced to 12 months, to ensure individuals are not being incarcerated for technical violations. I think a common theme that we've heard, Crystal mentioned it, I believe Brother Dawu mentioned it, is individuals, no, Brother Dawu ain't got no problems, he's good. But individuals who have substance abuse issues should not be going back to jail. We should not be incarcerating these individuals. We should be providing them with the services that they need to get help. In addition to SB 345 will make law an authority that DOC already has and some probation officers do utilize, but we're not seeing it used across the board, and that is customizable probation terms. And a prime example of that is if an individual gets a full-time job, especially a full-time job at a livable wage, a decent wage, his PO should be flexible instead of telling him, I still need you to report at 10 a.m. every Wednesday. And when he gets there at 10 a.m., he could probably be there on average 3 to 4 hours just to answer 2 questions with the probation officer. What employer do you know is going to tolerate? And if the goal is to get people working and support them in their success, then we need to have these customizable terms. If an individual is on probation and finds a job, 5 minutes cross the line to PA or 5 minutes cross the line to Maryland, especially if it's a livable wage job, that individual should be granted permission to be able to work at that place as long as they're providing the sufficient documentation with a hiring letter, pay stubs, and following the process. So we like to see customizable terms of probation law. And that is the 3 things that SB 345 is focusing on. And if you want to help and support that mission of reforming probation, again, you could go to the ACLU's website and send a letter to your senator, because this is legislative. When it comes to the policies and procedures of DOC, we have to try to attempt to create legislation that will then implement new policies. Senator Marie Pinckney is going to be our champion in our efforts to get this introduced in the Senate, and we'll be working with legislators in both the Senate and the House so that we can hopefully get things passed. In addition to doing so, we are with open arms willing to work with the Department of Corrections and any other stakeholders who would like to see individuals receive the services they need upon release, and we help boost them to success as opposed to looking at finding ways where we can increase our technical violations and our incarceration rate. The goal of smart justice is to decrease the incarceration rate and not increase. And that's what we hope to do with SB 345. Now, with that said, I will open the floor to any questions or comments, as well as online. If you are online watching and you have a question or comment, please feel free to use the raise hand function or put it in the chat. Yes.
With the bill, SB 345, with the technical violations too, that's been a problem. Does that talk about the astronomical bail amounts? Or is there?
It does not. That's a separate bail, is separate legislation.
Okay.
But if you sign up for the Smart Justice email list, you will get information on bail as well. Any more questions or comments around probation? Brother Saluk?
Yeah.
Well, 2 things. I hope I can remember both. You spoke in terms of OSS. So what comes to my mind is what legislation was enacted for that to become a reality? Because the Department of Correction and the police department are 2 separate entities. So it seems as though that something has cross-pollinated to bring about this cooperation that's not legislated. So how is it that this can be maintained without the law supporting their actions?
So the Operation Safe Streets will dive into it. I want to be very careful what I say because I want to be sure to speak all facts. So to my understanding, originally, Operation Safe Streets came about at the state level, right? But it is an agreement. What I do know is how it operates is an agreement between the Department of Corrections and specific police departments and city councils and or the executive lead of that municipality has the power to dissolve the relationship by withdrawing their police department from participating. Or DOC can decide to withdraw their participation by withdrawing probation officers. So to your point, the call to action and ending Operation Safe Streets, when you go to our website, is if you reside in Wilmington, we have a letter that are going to all Wilmington City Council. And if you live outside of Wilmington in Newcastle County, we have a letter that will be going to the entire Newcastle County Council, calling on them to dissolve the relationship in their municipalities with the Operation Safe Streets units.
So another question that I want to propose, especially with those of us that are on probation or parole and have to report to probation and parole. I noticed that they, on a continual basis, are able to come to our houses and to do what they do. And I would like to propose, rather than us going to appointments out to probation and parole, why not utilize those times when they come to check on us as our period of asking them a couple of questions that they always ask us. We stay there for 2 or 3 hours and only in the office for a few minutes to answer some non-random questions. So if their time is that important, and our time is definitely important, then why not utilize these after-hour stops when they come to our home to make those appointments? And that would help to alleviate the problem of all us reporting to probation and parole for those couple of minutes when we stay out there for 3 or 4 hours, just waiting for them.
Great point, and that's why we want to get legislation passed, because that would be policy. That's what customizable terms are. So if you're working, the PO would give you the option, oh, I do late hours on this day. You could come see me after 5 when you get off. Oh, I need to do a home visit anyway. What are your days off? What are your hours? I could come do a home visit, check in. These are customizable terms, which in all truth, some probation officers do that. They support their individuals on probation. They say, yo, you got a job at $20 an hour, you go ahead. I'm gonna be able to get to make the contact and do what we need to do, right? And on the flip side, it is no need to customize probation if an individual is not working, right? Yeah, that might be a little motivation. In fact, people might not like it when I say this, but you might need to report twice a week till you get that gig, if it's been a substantial amount of time where you've decided not to work, right? But that's what customizable terms of probation would include, but we would like to see a policy, because in my perception and from what I'm hearing from individuals currently on probation, all probation officers aren't doing this. Some probation officers are making it very, very tough. I don't care how much you're getting paid. You need to be here at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, right? So we just want to see an end to that, and we want it to be policy that is services first, right? Not just jobs, housing's a big deal, right? And again, in all truth, there are some probation officers who have individuals on their caseload with housing issues, and they are flexible. They say, just give me a call to let me know where you laying your head each night, and you'll be cool. Now you got some probation officers that say, listen, if you ain't got a stable address, in the next 2-3 weeks, you going back over to the plumber center or to a level 4 facility till you can get your housing. So we needed to be uniform where we're providing services first, getting to the root of people issues and helping them resolve those issues.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you. What do uniformity look like on a whole for the probation and parole functioning? I mean,
They gotta be law or policy.
well, because it seems as though that each individual make their own laws and policy in terms of how they're going to deal with their particular clients.
Because the law or policy is at the more strict or stringent end, and a probation officer has the discretion to be more lenient if he or she chooses. What we like to see is the law and policy be more laid back. And the Department of Corrections uses a tool that they also have, and some use, graduated sanctions, right? You don't have to send a person to jail because they didn't pay when they fines. You don't have to stack these violations and let a person get 6 dirty urines, and then as soon as he missed the curfew, you got 6 dirty urines and missed curfew, you going back to jail. No, you could be giving them graduated sanctions. You got a dirty urine, you have to do this substance abuse treatment. Okay, you got another dirty urine and you never went to sign up for that outpatient treatment. Next dirty urine, you have to go to inpatient treatment, right? These are graduated sanctions, which Department of Corrections has liberty to use, but it's not policy and procedure that they use that first before incarceration. That's it.
Can you share those 3 aspects for the 3 commands that you guys had? And then I'll say what I need to say about the
The 3 main things that SB 345 is going to do.
You shared them once, right?
Yep, is limit probation terms to 12 months, right? And I want to put a preface on limiting probation terms to 12 months. Currently, the standard, I'm not sure if it's policy or standard, is 2 years, right? It said that nobody should be on probation more than 24 months. A judge does have discretion for people with sex offenses and serious violent charges. The judge can say, okay, you need to be monitored longer than 2 years.
But that's
So-
based on the judge.
That's on the judge.
Probation.
That's on the judge.
Well, that's not necessarily so, because under the old law, you still got to deal with parole.
And parole is totally separate from probation, so you are correct. Parole is totally separate from probation. If you were sentenced under the old law and you have parole, that is different from probation. Although, yeah, it's different from probation. I'm not going to dive into parole. That's not my expertise. So I don't want to overlook you, Brother Dawu, but I want to answer this question. It will be limiting probation terms to 12 months, and the judge would still have discretion. It would prevent individuals from being incarcerated for a technical violation without commission of a new crime. And it would allow for customized terms of probation.
So with that, I want to say, I was on probation for 12 months. 12 months was all I needed for me to decide that I wasn't going to go back to selling drugs. I wasn't going to go back to getting in trouble. I wasn't going to go back to jail. I knew that probation was a means for me to end up back in jail. I knew that if I violated, I knew that if I didn't show up for one of those meetings that I had to have with my probation officer at Jerry Lane every month, I had to go there and piss test me sometimes. I just had to be clean. I knew that I had to do that. I got there when I needed to get there, I did what I needed to do, and walked up out of there. But when I wasn't on probation, I got pulled over by the police, by probation officers. They treated me like I was in jail. They treated me like, not like I was just somebody they was trying to lock up, somebody that was already locked up. As a black man driving in the west side, they said that they pulled me over because I had too many of those little trees in front of my head on my mirror. I knew that wasn't why they pulled me over. They pulled me over, and that was the reason that they pulled me over. These probation. They took me out of the car. They searched the whole vehicle. You know how they could unlawful Terry back, they go in your pockets and all that. They gave me flashbacks when I first got locked up, when I was selling drugs, when I was doing wrong things. But I was doing right. They were going for work. But these probation officers, who I believe was with Operation Safe Streets, they was in Wilmington and they was probation officers and they was breaking laws and they was doing what they wanted to do. They shouldn't be around. And I say all that just to say, I support 100% everything that y'all trying to do as far as 12 months. That sounds good to me. So 12 months is all I needed. If you got any kind of job that prevents you from getting your probation here when you need to get there, the probation officer should understand that. And I know I work with Cindy Matthews. Cindy Matthews, my work first, she was awesome. The actual officer that I had, she my favorite. Give it that. It was something different. But she was cool too. 12 months, only one day a month that I had to go and see her. I made sure I was there. You out of jail. You should feel blessed to be out of that place, and you should never want to go back. So everything that you can to get the probation on time, so that you don't have to go back, because you ain't like being there. You going to do it. You got it. What you say about the job? You ain't had a job for this long. What did you just say about that?
You might need a little extra encouragement.
Yeah.
So thank you, good brother, for sharing.
I'm Martivo.
Thank you, D, for sharing.
Everybody call me.
I do. We haven't heard from you this evening.
This is a dumb question.
There's no
Can you talk
dumb question.
about technical violations? Could you explain what those actually are?
Technical violations, and I'm glad you asked because I wanted to address a point somebody is making on the chat on Zoom. Technical violations are when a person's probation is violated because they broke one of the probation policy or rules, right? An example is failing drug screening, right? Missing a scheduled appointment with your probation officer. Not being in the house during a scheduled curfew check. Not paying on your fine in a timely manner. Not obtaining employment in a timely manner, right? These are just some examples of the most common ways an individual's probation is violated, right? I get very few stories nowadays of individuals just having one instance, right? So I'm not here to say somebody tested dirty one time and they went to jail. But there are individuals, which are contrary to the belief of some of the people on this Zoom today, that are being incarcerated without committing a new crime. They are. There are individuals, it's not for the first one, who are being incarcerated for repeat failure of drug screenings. I'm not that far removed. Prior to working with the ACLU, I worked with the Wilmington Hopes Commission Achievement Center, which is a relationship that is focused on service first. And I haven't seen it people within the reentry program. So there are individuals. And another thing that I'm hearing, or a lot of people, or a couple people, two people I put in the chat, some of, or a lot of what we're saying, DOC is already doing. And I think I've been clear today, and I'm not saying DOC never does anything. I said it's within their authority, and we do have probation officers that do it. And my point is, if DOC is already doing it, let's just make it law. Let's put it on the books so that it is the uniform policy and procedure that will go by all officers. Yes, Kasira, and then I'm gonna come to you, Crystal. I know you have a point.
So we had a question in the chat from Al Stratford, who says, are there any other states that have already implemented customized terms of probation similar to what SB 345 is advocating for? And if so, do we know the results?
The one I'm most familiar with is Philadelphia. Philadelphia has very loose customized forms of probation. And their reincarceration rates for violation of probations without a new crime are impressive. So that's the one that I'm most familiar with. I can't give you off top any other states or cities offhand that have already done. I'll take Crystal and
And this is just in King County. What we're seeing down there that I've seen is these administrative warrants through OSS and probation and parole. They're utilizing these so-called admin warrants, and they're running up in people's houses that have not what you would consider had police contact or committed another crime. But because they're on probation and they're on a list, they're utilizing this strategy. And you'd have 4 people living in the house, but the only person that is arrested or incarcerated is the person that's on probation. And we're seeing that, especially like in Simon Circle, Waco, that they're using administrative warrants to go in, but the people that are actually so-called, they don't have criminal records in this, the probationers are the only ones that are being affected. They're not actually arresting the slew of people that are in the apartment. If you're unlawful, supposedly unlawful, then everybody should be arrested. So that's what's happening in Kent County right now. We've had 2 instances within the last week. And I watched that big old truck roll up in my neighborhood, and I moved. And I live in a quiet neighborhood, and they ran up in this woman's house based on, you know, so-called CIs and things of that nature. But everybody wasn't arrested. It was just a probationer. And it was a white kid. It wasn't even a black kid. It was a white kid they did it to.
And so in closing, I just seen another comment that highlighted the probation's reentry unit that is designed to help individuals coming home from prison. And let's build capacity. The last I checked in on the reentry unit, it was focused on a specific group of people because it didn't have the capacity to serve everybody on probation. Let's build capacity. Let's allow a reentry unit where anybody that's on probation and say, I want help with my reentry, can go to the reentry unit and get those services. I am not for anything. I am not trying to impede anything that's not going on or overlook anything that's going on. So in closing, I would like to say that if there is anybody connected to probation and parole with the state of Delaware that is fact checking what I'm saying or can provide me with information and facts to show the inaccuracies, please let me know. If there are additional resources that I'm not highlighting that probation has for individuals, let me know. And at the same time, if you're online, you can see in the chat, even here in person, you know, I'm trying to convince everybody. I don't know how good of a job I am of convincing everybody that these are facts and things that we need to do. But if you are picking up what I'm laying down and you know people who are going through these issues, you know people who have been violated for technical violations, you know people who are being challenged and harassed by Operation Safe Streets, please reach out to the Campaign for Smart Justice and the ACLU of Delaware, because we just want to ensure that everyone can have smart justice, not no justice. And smart justice is here to reduce the prison population and reduce the racial disparities within the system. I appreciate everybody for viewing, watching. Thank you for coming out. And I hope that you will stay involved with the Campaign for Smart Justice. And if you are here in person, I will stick around. If you had any comments or questions you want to say offline, I ask that you please sign in so that we can stay up with you and you take some of the literature that we have here for you on your way out the door. But thanks again for everyone coming out. I appreciate you all.